The StageLeft Podcast tells the stories of the unsung heroes behind the success and gleans what we can about the working practices of the greats from those who were in close proximity when the magic was being made. The podcast also aims to extract key information and advice to help a future generation of musicians in an increasingly complex industry. For more episodes featuring musicians who played live with or worked in the studio with the likes of David Bowie, Michael Jackson, Elvis, Bob Dylan, Fleetwood Mac, The Prodigy, Paul McCartney, many, many more, go to the StageLeftPodcast.com. You can also stream all our episodes on Audio Boom exclusively, and you can join over 100,000 Stage Left fans by clicking the subscribe button on iTunes, where each episode, as it is released, will be automatically downloaded into your conscience. Quick thank you to the people who are still posting incredible feedback and humbling comments on the YouTube page regarding the Tony Visconti episode. Tony produced many David Bowie albums, including Black Star, and we recorded an in-depth discussion about that recording process and David Bowie's work just a few days before Bowie passed. We've had many wonderful comments on the YouTube pages, including even some people saying that listening to the episode was like a cathartic experience in dealing with Bowie's passing, which is just such an overwhelming thing to hear. And it was the whole thing for that month was pretty crazy and overwhelming experience for us all. So those of you who haven't checked it out, if you want to, it's episode 15, Tony Visconti. Also, quick thank you to Ben Green of The Guardian. Ben is the producer of The Guardian's Football Weekly podcast and has been doing that for over a decade. They're playing the Palladium soon, would you believe? Just for a podcast, that's pretty crazy. And he recently wrote a book called The Podcast Master and made us a recommended listen as well. So just a quick shout out to him. Thanks for that. Our following episode after this, episode 21, is going to be with none other than Steve Cropper, who wrote Sitting on the Dock of the Bay with Otis Redding, recently played for Barack Obama at his request with Justin Timberlake, has been in the Blues Brothers band his whole career, and he's just a god. You'll know at least 100 songs that he's played on. We're recording that later today, which is pretty exciting. For now, episode 20, fascinating insight from Cone McCaslin of Sum 41. Really, really top guy. Gives great advice and great anecdotes about his career, and I hope you enjoy it. This is Cone McCaslin. Okay, welcome to the Stage Left Podcast, lifting the veil on the music industry by telling the stories of those with a unique vantage point. Today we're joined by the bassist, vocalist, producer and songwriter Cone McCaslin of the Grammy-nominated and multi-award-winning Sum 41. Today we'll be discussing an incredible career that has spanned nearly 2 decades in a band who have played thousands of pulsating gigs to millions of fans worldwide. Today we'll be finding out about Cone's unique experiences in the music industry, what advice he would give young musicians, what it's like collaborating with Iggy Pop and Jack Black, and we'll be discussing the incredible events around the Sum 41 rock documentary, which saw Cone and his bandmates literally caught in the crossfire between rebel fighters and government officials in a harrowing and life-changing experience. So it's a pleasure to say our guest today on the Stage Left Podcast is the fabulously gifted Cone McCaslin of Sum 41. Thanks for joining us today, Cone. How's it going?
Oh, good. Thanks for having me.
Good.
Thanks for the intro. That's a very flattering intro.
That's great stuff. Now, I actually wrote this interview in Osaka because I was due to meet you last week, but unfortunately your flight got delayed, so we're recording this via Skype. I'm now back in London. Are you still in Japan at the moment, or are you home now?
No, I'm home. I'm actually at my in-laws in Ajax. Ajax was a town that Sum 41 actually grew up in.
Right. Okay. So you're back home. When did you get back?
A couple days ago, Thursday, I believe.
Right.
So it's been a few days.
Right, and I know you were coming from to Osaka from China. I think it was Shanghai. That was the first time Sum 41 had played China. Is that right?
Second time. We were there in 2012, doing the same cities, Beijing, Shanghai, in 2012. So this was our second time playing those cities again. And
tell us, how you've obviously played so many gigs worldwide. Tell us how the audiences vary, if there's any kind of extreme examples. I mean, what's the audience like in China compared to, I know you've played some gigs in Nashville not long ago. So how does that compare?
Actually, a lot different. I think in China they're just starting. I mean, bands have played there. Bands that aren't from China have played there before, but I think more now, there's more North American, more Western bands, European bands, Australian bands, whoever, playing in China now. They're starting to get more, and I think the government still is, well, they regulate a lot of stuff. Like before we go, we have to submit our set list, and with lyrics and everything, and they have to approve songs that we can play. And
really?
They have government officials in the crowd to make sure that we follow that set list, and you can't say anything about the government. You can't say anything about your political views. You can't. There's all these rules.
Oh wow! And
that you have to follow when you play in China. So it's kind of the strangest concerts that we've ever played. Just following all these guidelines, and last time we played there, we had to play In Too Deep twice because they didn't allow enough of our songs to be approved. Well, we only have an hour to play, but we have to play an hour and a half. So we had to play In Too Deep twice, and this time, for some strange reason, they approved songs that they didn't approve last time. Wow. So it's just kind of, I don't know, it's just how they feel that day or something. I don't know.
That's an incredible insight. I had no idea about that. That must have been a challenge for a band like yourselves, because obviously you're quite an anti-establishment band and you're quite outspoken. And I've obviously listened to a lot of your live gigs, and it's you're always kind of whipping the crowd into a bit of a frenzy. So yeah, it must have been difficult to kind of censor yourselves and kind of pull the reins in. But did the crowd did it go down well? Did your change set list? I guess it did.
Yeah, no, it did. There's still, and there's a lot of there's like a military presence at these shows, a lot of police officers and stuff, and they don't really like the kids to they think that they're going to incite a riot or something if they get too excited, so they're not allowed to get overly excited at these shows, which is strange. But another strange thing is, someone told me when we got to Japan and we were explaining the situation, a lot of Japanese people were saying, well, that's how it was in Japan 25, 30 years ago.
Right.
It was very tame, and something happened through the 90s or late 80s and the 90s where I guess the government and security started relaxing a little bit, and now the shows in Japan are insane. Like, it's crazy and awesome. But so hopefully, China will start to relax a little bit on that kind of stuff, and just know that, kids are going to concerts just to have fun. They're not going to
yeah,
get together and start a big thing against the government or something.
That's incredible. That's a great insight. Thank you. And talking about Japan, I think it was a festival you played. In regards to festivals, I mean, many times obviously you're going to be playing festivals where perhaps maybe 30 or 40% of the crowd are kind of hardcore Sum 41 fans, but then you've obviously got a lot of fans of other bands there. When you go out there and play a festival, who are you playing to? Are you trying to win over a new audience, or are you trying to win? Does that play on your mind at all? Or are you just going to go out there and do your thing?
Yeah, I guess a little bit with festivals, because you don't want to really play. I mean, we do once in a while, but we don't really want to play like the deep cuts that like no one will know.
Yeah.
So you might get like a handful of kids that know like the first song off the first EP that we ever released or something like that. But then you got the rest of the crowd that are just like kind of standing there wondering what's going on. So I think we normally stick to kind of the singles and stuff at festivals, and throw in a couple of album tracks that maybe were more popular songs as album tracks or something like that. I mean, for us, yeah, we've always known that we always have to keep gaining new fans. So we always want to impress the people that don't necessarily come to Sum 41 shows. So when we go do our own tour, they come to Sum 41 shows.
It's a great outlook. And when you're deciding set lists, I mean, you're a band who played so many, thousands of gigs. When do you decide? Is it 10 minutes before you go on, or the night before, or do you decide on the stage as you're going along, or do you have to let lighting engineers know what songs up, with your set list? How does that work?
Yeah, well, normally Derek, like a week or two before the tour, will send us like for this tour, he sent us like a thing like, hey, here's the set list I was thinking about. And then, normally they're great, his sets are always well thought out and stuff. So, a couple times we could say like, oh, what about swapping that song? But it's normally like he comes up with a really good set, and it's, a couple weeks prior to the tour. And yeah, because we, on the last album, we didn't have a lighting guy. And now we have a lighting guy again, so it's always nice to give them more than us anything. I mean, I've been playing these songs for 18 years, so it doesn't matter if we swap out a song here and there. But for a lighting guy, something like that, it's a lot of work to like last minute, like, oh, we're gonna play this song instead of this song, and he's like, because everything's programmed. So we put a lot of thought into our shows, and we want to give people working for us enough of time to do as best they can do for us.
I don't know if you're aware, but it was said a year or two ago that when U2 go on tour, and if they decide to change their set list, even if it's just one song, they have to give like the sound crew and lighting crew like 3 months notice, or something, which is quite believable because they put on obviously such a crazy and elaborate show. So the StageLeft Podcast is the story of the unsung heroes behind the success. Where did your musical story start? I mean, were your parents musicians? And perhaps you could tell us about the first time you picked up an instrument.
Yeah, no, my parents were very. I mean, my parents listened to a lot of music growing up. My mom was really big into Elton John and Rod Stewart, and my dad is really into the Rolling Stones and the Beatles and all that stuff. And so I grew up with a lot of that kind of stuff, but they didn't play instruments. The first time I ever picked up an instrument, I was 14. I was in grade 9. It was like the summer going into high school, and I lived in this court with like same age 2 friends that now are still my friends since I was 4 years old. And one guy bought a guitar, and then the other guy bought a guitar, and then we had another friend that lived 5 minutes down the road, and he played drums and percussion in the grade 8 band. And they all bought these instruments, and I was kind of like the jealous friend that was like, "Oh, what about me, guys?" and so they're like, "Well, if you want to kind of be in the band, you have to play the bass." And I was kind of like, the bass? And I don't even think I'd heard of the bass. Like, I probably knew that, people played that instrument, but I didn't really know what it was. So I researched on the bass, and I was like, oh, wow, it's got 4 strings. That's cool. That must be easier. and I literally...
Little did you know.
Yeah, I know. And literally, like, scrounged some money up and begged my mom to buy me, like a beginner bass. So we went up to the local music store and bought like this really cheap black bass, and it kind of looked like the same bass that Chris Novoselic played in Nirvana, and that was big, at the time, because it was like 1994.
Yeah.
So all that stuff was massive, and so basically I wanted something that looked like his bass.
Yeah.
And so we went and bought it, and then we just started playing a lot of like bad grunge songs.
And talk about in those first kind of couple of years, perhaps you were playing bass. Obviously, you mentioned Chris from Nirvana. What other bassists were influencing you specifically? And perhaps you might be able to elaborate on what bassists influence you now that you're a bit older and you've kind of listened to more music and branched out.
Back then it was everything that was I would buy these compilations because of Nirvana, right? So it was like, Geffen compilations or Sub Pop compilations. So, I mean, I didn't even really know the names of the bass players back then. It was just, I would just listen to any of those bands.
Yeah.
And obviously, in 1994, Green Day came out with Dookie.
Yeah.
And Offspring came out. So those albums was smashing. Those albums were really big for me, too.
Yeah.
So Mike Dirnt, obviously, I was listening to him a lot back then. And now, I don't know. I wouldn't say like I have just a bass player that I listen to. I listen to so many types of music now. So when I think about a song that I have to play bass on, I kind of just take it for what it is. I don't know. Just there's so many different styles of music I listen to. So I don't really have just one main influence or 2 main influences on bass. It's like everything now.
And when you were playing bass at the beginning in the band, looking back, being honest, what were you trying to accomplish? What were you trying to achieve? What were your ambitions then?
Back when I was 14, it was basically just for fun. It was to get together with your friends, smoke some weed in a basement, and play, and no ambition to like do it for a living, really, because it was just, that seemed so far out of reach.
Yeah.
Because we still had all of high school to go through, and then you're expected to go to college. So it was just basically, it was to get out of the house and be with your friends, have a couple beers underage and do it, and I think that's how most people start anyway. And we were kind of no different. Yeah,
I agree with that. And tell us about how that then did transpose over the years, because you were very young when you did sign your record contract, I think. So you joined Sum 41, I think, in 98, and then you signed the record contract to Ireland in 99. Is that right?
Yeah. I played my first show, I think it was like February of 98, and we got signed to Island Def Jam of December of 99. So almost two years.
And obviously a lot of Sum 41 fans will know this, but we've got a lot of listeners who might not know. So tell us how you actually joined the band in the first stages and how you got involved.
Yeah, well, I was in that same grunge band I was talking about for probably, I guess, 4 years, and then I guess Sum 41 had gone on like a small little East Coast Canadian tour, and they got into a van accident, and their bass player at the time got really freaked out, and when they got home, because the van was totaled and all this stuff, and when they got home, he quit, and they had a bunch of shows coming up, and the good thing about Sum 41, even when we were teenagers, they were always constantly playing. My band rarely played live because our singer was just so afraid. So that was kind of a big thing for me. I was like, wow, you guys actually play shows. So they got home and they were strapped and they were like, do you think you could just fill in for, 2 or 3 shows? And I was like, yeah, sure. And after I got off the phone, I instantly got nervous, I remember, because they played so much faster than our band had played. And I was like, oh my God, can I even do this? I just said yes, and I don't know if I could do it. So, I'd get together with Derek and Steve and Dave constantly, and it actually turned out to be not as difficult as I thought at the time. So we played these shows, and then eventually they asked me if I could just be in the band. And it was really hard because I was in the other band with like my best friend since I was 4 years old. And we started this band when we were 14, and I had to go to them and say, I'm quitting now. And they were pretty pissed off. I guess throughout the years, they kind of realized, we're not really doing much. It's just we're just doing this for fun, basically. And Sum 41 was actually playing a lot. So that's kind of how it all started.
And a lot of musicians now, particularly young musicians, they'll know that people can kind of get a lot of exposure through the internet without being signed as such. But when you signed in 99, I mean, we're a similar age, and I was in a band around then, and the big aim was to get signed, because really it always felt that unless you were signed, you would never be able to make it otherwise in any other way. So what do you remember about that day? Was that a really big deal at that time? Because obviously you were still a young man.
Yeah, it was actually a big build-up, because it was about a year of even like 2 years prior to that, or a year and a half prior to that, there was like indie labels that even like passed on us.
Right.
So it was a process, and then finally we did a showcase every week in Toronto at this place called Ted's Wrecking Yard, and we went and did every Wednesday we'd play at Ted's Wrecking Yard, and all these labels would finally come out and see us from the U.S. I guess even before that, we were sending out VHS tapes with us, screwing around in Ajax, and then we put our music over top of it. That's kind of what garnered all the interest in the band. It was something different. It wasn't just sending your demo tape to record companies. It was like sending a VHS tape of video of you with your music over top, almost like like you'd see like as a snowboard video or something like that.
Yeah.
So then all these U.S. people started coming up and seeing us, and then it turned into an all-out like frenzy. After a few weeks, it was like we had every label from the U.S. coming out to see us, and then we just came down to 2 labels, and we felt really comfortable and good about Island Def Jam, and we went with them. And we were 19. Yeah, I remember signing. We went to people might know like the CN Tower in Toronto.
Right. Wow. Yeah.
So we went and signed the deal up there, and yeah, we were really young. It was cool.
That sounds, you living the dream. And I mean, things got pretty big for you quickly at a young age. How do you think you dealt with that? How did that affect you personally? Kind of you, living the dream, but at such a young age. How did that affect you?
I think it was good, because I see bands that are like, I know friends now like that are in bands and they're like 33, 34, and their band's just starting to get attention. They have to go on the road a ton, and they're like, oh my God, I have kids now. And
yeah.
But being 19 when we got signed, and then we hop in a van when basically right away, and went for these long tours. It was a little bit easier, I think. I don't know if I'd want to start now and just be thrown into it at 35. We were more durable back then.
Yeah.
We could do those long tours and kind of not feel any your body's not aching as much as it is now, stuff like that. So I don't know. It was a little bit tough. I mean, you're leaving friends, and you're leaving like me, Dave and I had girlfriends, and but it's basically it was the time of our life, so we were all really excited about it.
Sounds amazing. And tell us about some of the touring pressures that we don't see. Jet lag?
Yeah, I mean, jet lag's always a thing. It's mostly, I hate really complaining about it because it's like the dream job, I think. For me, for being a musician, it's like, of course you'd want to be in a touring band that works all the time and plays shows in front of people that actually come to the shows. I mean, the things that, will start to drain on you is just basically being away from home for that long, being on a bus or a van for, 2 months at a time. You do get tired and you do get drained, but I mean, there's not really much to complain about. And
tell us how you compartmentalise your relationship as friends with the rest of the band and actually kind of working with them. That's obviously always going to be an evolving, ongoing challenge. How do you approach that now, and how did you approach that when you started in the band? Was it something you thought about?
Yeah, it was easier that way because we were friends. There was no Craigslist ads or anything, and there's no strangers coming into the mix. So even when Dave quit in 2005 or 6, when Tom came into the band, we'd known him from Gob, so he wasn't a stranger even. It was just easier because we had all gone to high school together since we were 14. So we knew each other really well, and we could get along really well. We could joke around, and we could make fun of each other, and it wouldn't hurt our feelings, that kind of thing. Like, just the chemistry between us all was really great, and it still is. I mean, it's different now because we're older, and we all have, we live in different areas. Like, I live in Toronto, and Derek lives in LA, so we don't see each other. We don't hang out as really off tour. So the chemistry is a little bit different, but we can still get along, and we still have the goal to make good music and tour and have fun and that kind of stuff.
Two of the big songs I remember from I saw you at Reading around, I think it would have been about 2000, 2001. I might be slightly out there, but In Too Deep and Fat Lip. Tell us what you remember about writing those songs and how those songs come together.
Yeah, actually doing All Killer No Filler back then, I remember being in pre-production with Jerry Finn at the time, and those two songs hadn't evolved yet. So we were basically doing All Killer without those songs. And I remember just going and doing it, and the album was coming together, and then we'd go to LA and record some more. And then I remember In Too Deep had been around for a while, but we just never really worked on it and made it like a rock song. It was kind of this song that was just there, but we didn't know if we were going to use it or not. Derek had written it like months and months before we even started recording All Killer. And then Fat Lip I think was the last song that got written. And I remember he had like a little demo of it, and he was showing it. And the thing about that was we'd always do, we did medleys in our set of like 80s rock songs into hip hop songs. And it was like a 4-minute collage of all these cover songs. And we would do Run DMC, and we would do Into like a Warrant song or something like that. So the rap thing was always kind of around for us live. We never really had any rap songs ourselves. So when Fat Lip came up, it just kind of made sense. It was like, well, we're already kind of doing this. Let's just try and make it our own now. And it just kind of evolved like that.
You now got a new album out, is that right? It's coming out in a couple of months, is that right?
Yeah, it'll be out this year. I think it's a couple months. We don't have a release date yet. It's pretty close to being done.
So you just mentioned pre-production meetings. I wonder, in the pre-production meeting, if you had one for this particular album, what was the blueprint?
this album was the most. It was it was way different than any other album we've ever done. It was, what happened was, after Derek got out of the hospital and we started talking again, and we decided, let's do this again. He just started writing songs like crazy, and then we didn't actually get together and jam as a band on this album. We didn't go. It was mostly internet stuff. It was like he'd send some demos, and then I'd figure out some bass parts, send it back to him, and he'd be like, yeah, that's cool, but what if you did this? And then I'd send it back again. It was all over the internet this time. It wasn't like getting together. And he'd get together with Frank, who's drumming with us, Frank Zuma, who's drumming with us now, and he'd just get together solo with him and work on the song with him. And then, it'd all just be, it's definitely a stranger process and a different process this time. But I mean, the album is, I still think it's great. And it was just a different process this time. Are
you playing any tracks live from it at the moment on the tour that you've just been on?
No, but we were working on a song in soundcheck every day. So we're slowly trying to maybe sneak a new one in here or there. Time to rehearse.
So I'm interested in how the sound of the band has evolved in some ways, because actually I got the okay that this interview was going to be going ahead in Japan quite late on, which meant I had to do kind of a lot of last minute listening to your back catalogue around Kyoto, walking through Buddhist temples, listening to your early albums, which was quite a surreal and interesting contrast and experience. But the further we got into your back catalogue, the sound did evolve, and there was a lot of kind of different tempo songs and that kind of thing. How does this album compare and contrast to other albums you've done?
I think sonically, sound-wise, it's much like Scream Bloody Murder. Like, it has that kind of feel. But then the songs, I guess they're more to the point on this album. There's some I think on the last album there was an 8-minute song or a 7-minute song. So these ones are more in the vein of It Does Look Infected or Chuck, where they're hard and heavy, but they're snappy and quick, and there's not many songs that are long or dragged out breakdowns and stuff like that. That we kind of experimented on a little bit more on the last album with Scream Bloody Murder. We did that on purpose. We were like, let's kind of experiment on making some longer stuff, some stuff that rides into each other. On this one, it's back to kind of 3 to 4 minute hard hitting fast rock songs.
Great, can't wait to hear it. And you mentioned Derek wasn't well not so long ago. How's he doing now?
Oh, he's great. He's been sober for how many years now? He's been sober for 2-3 years, and he's feeling good, and he's playing great, and he's singing great, and performing great, and he's in good spirits. He seems happy, and he's married, and so he's doing good. Yeah,
I saw photos of him and recent performances, and he's looking really well, and it's great to see him back doing what he does best. And now I think it's right, you've got a young family now, and you kind of touched upon it earlier. How's that changed your outlook in regards to touring? I know you said you don't want to complain about touring and the difficulties, but unfortunately, with the way the music industry is now, a lot of bands do have to tour to make their money. Has that changed your outlook, and is that more of a challenge now?
Yeah, definitely. Having a kid, you don't really know until you do it. And now going away, it definitely feels way different. It's not that I don't want to go away. It's just he's was 16 months old, and so it's you're afraid to miss things because there's so much that's going on with him. He's almost ready to walk, and he's kind of starting to talk a little bit, and you're just if I go away for 2 months, he could be fully walking and talking by the time I get back, and I'll have missed it all. So that's basically the only. It's definitely it's changed in that regard, where it's you just don't want to miss things in your kid's life, but you make it work, and most older musicians have kids. We've toured with Offspring and Noodles and those guys. They all have kids. They have multiple kids, and they always make it work. And so I'm looking at other bands and just seeing that it can work and how it all happens.
And tell us about your some of the other stuff you've done. So I know you've been involved, I think, Strumbellas and a couple of other bands that you've started up yourself. how does that work with your influences? Because if you're writing in one band, are you sometimes, say, kind of a bit torn whether you should be using this material or this particular bass line or this backing vocal and harmony in one band or the other, or does Sum 41 just kind of let you get up to whatever you want away from the band?
But yeah, I guess when I got into producing albums, the bands I was producing were so different from Sum 41. Like the Strumbellas is like an old country, band, and like I'm doing a band right now called Sun K, and they're more like rock and roll, psychedelic kind of thing. So there's never really any conflict with ideas. Plus, Derek being the main songwriter in Sum 41, it kind of, I always submit some stuff every record and have some songs and some ideas, and they rarely get used. So it's he's got the thing, like Derek's got the Sum 41 thing where like he's always been the writer. So it's never really been a conflict for me. I've never really produced a band that's been like Sum 41 either. So it's always been different, which is nice. Being in Sum 41, I love doing it, but it's also nice to venture into other musical genres.
What did you learn most? What's the one or two things you learned most from when you've begun producing other bands about yourself and yourself in the studio when being produced?
I think I'm really happy about our band, how we evolved in a way of we worked so hard. And I realized watching young bands of like some of the attitudes sometimes are like thinking that it's like just happens and you don't have to really work hard, and you quickly get into conversations where it's like, no, we have to record every day, and you guys have to practice every day. You have to do pre-production till it's the song is perfect, and you have to play it like you've been playing it for 3 years. And that's in Sum 41. I guess we did that really early on. Like we constantly practiced. We were 6 days a week. Before we did a record, we were just in the rehearsal spaces, just hours upon hours. That was our life. So I think when I started producing, I noticed that a lot of bands don't have that kind of drive, and you have to really push them to get that drive. And it comes. It's just like, wow, you really you just think this is just going to happen. It's not just going to happen. You really have to work hard at it, and you have to own your instrument.
This place is so empty, my thoughts are so tempting. I don't know how it got so bad. Sometimes it's so crazy that nothing can save me, but it's the only thing that I have.
The thing is that's different about Sum 41 and when we were doing it back then, and how it is with older bands, is everyone's got jobs. So the biggest challenge is trying to get, like I said, like the work we need to do in this amount of time when everyone's got 9 to 5 jobs, or one guy's a bartender, or one guy's a teacher or something like that. And it's like we have to do this album. We have to get the band together almost every day and make it the best we can be. When in Sum 41, when we were 21, we all had just really minor part-time jobs just to have a little bit of cash. So it's different producing these bands where they're like older and they live in apartments and they need to pay rent, and it's a challenge that way, because I'm just always of the frame of mind is like, let's just focus on the band, and we should be doing this 6-7 hours a day, and but it's kind of unrealistic if people have to pay rent, right? So.
Yeah, it's kind of a reflection of modern times in music as well, unfortunately.
Yeah.
It's I think it's a good point you raised. So I believe you worked with Iggy Pop on Little Know It All. What was your involvement? How did you get involved working with Iggy?
Yeah, that was, I guess, in 2003. We had just come out with Does Look Infected, and we were touring, and I remember our manager called Derek, and he said, Iggy, we got a call from Iggy's label, or I think that's what it was, and Iggy really wants to do a song with you guys. And then, I think what happened was Iggy called Derek, and they had a conversation, and I remember Derek getting off the phone and be like, yeah, Iggy just called. Iggy Pop just called and he was like, "Hey, I'm Iggy. I used to be in a band called the Stooges." And then Terry's like, "Yeah, we know."
Yeah.
And they had this conversation, and what kind of song it should be. And I remember Derek off the phone, and he wrote the opening riff, and then I think him and Iggy started going back and forth, with demos and stuff. And then we went into a studio in LA for 2 days and recorded it with him. And then even after that, we were backing band for the MTV Latin Awards, so we played that song and Lust for Life, and then we did an award show in Toronto. So it was cool. We did a music video with them, so we got to really hang out with them quite a bit. And actually, he just played in Toronto last night, and I was talking to him over email because I couldn't go. So we still stay in touch, and
awesome.
He's like the coolest, most humble, I guess, legend of a musician that I've ever met.
And what would a musician learn from Iggy that they might not learn from anyone else? What makes him stand out when you've worked with him either live or in the studio?
I think more performing with him. Like, he really, even into his, I don't even know how old he is, but he's got to be 60s or 70s by now, and he just still, it's like that concert he's doing at the time is like, that means everything to him. And he gives it his all every night, no matter what. When we performed with him in Toronto at the Casby Awards, he crowd surfed. He jumped into the crowd, and I was like, holy, look at this guy. He's just still, the passion is still crazy. So I think that's the biggest thing, is the performing with him really opened your eyes to every performance means something, and it should be and the preparation that he takes for it is like a long, it really puts a lot into every performance, basically.
You talked about playing some quite high-profile gigs with him. What advice would you give? I mean, you're probably not a musician now who has to worry about nerves and stuff like that, but you've played shows such as, I know you've done Saturday Night Live and David Letterman, that kind of thing. You often get a lot of nervous energy on the day of a big gig. What do you do with that energy?
Yeah, sometimes more than others, but it's more anticipation than being nervous. It's like if you're going to play a headline a festival or something, it's knowing that you are putting on a performance for 20,000 people or something, and they're all waiting to see you because you're the headliner. That kind of stuff is it's nerve-wracking, but it's also for me, it's more just anticipation. Let's kind of get this going. Not kind of oh my God, I don't want to go out there.
How do you not tighten up though? So do you keep loose, I'd imagine, but does it fill you with any anxiety, or you're pretty chilled about it?
Yeah, I think it's more adrenaline. None of us, a lot of us prepare a lot too. We prepare hours before the show, so it's a build up for us. It's not just we're not just sitting on a couch in our dressing room drinking beers and then it's okay, stage time, and we jump up and we run on stage. It's preparation. We're all warming up backstage. We're all stretching and talking about the show and the set and segues in the set and stuff like that. So it's a lot of build up. So yeah, it's more just it's adrenaline, and I don't know. I guess we've been doing it enough now that I never get nervous in a way of I don't want to go on stage right now. It's more let's get this going already.
Worth a millionaire. Private. I got a torch to fill. Drive a GTO. I wear a uniform. I like a double hello. I'm worth a millionaire. Private. I'm sick of sleeping on the sidewalk. No more.
And you worked with Jack Black as well, is that right?
Yeah.
Tell us your memories about that. What was that? Was that live or in the studio?
Yeah, Jack Black and Kyle, Tenacious D. So that was a strange thing too. That was the Christmas song in 2001. But what had happened was we were doing it for K-Rock, the radio station. It was September 10th, 2001. We went to a studio in Los Angeles, started the song, and then we woke up on September 11th, and the terrorist attacks had happened.
Shit.
So we had to cancel our studio time the second day with them, and we had a tour bus at the time because we were on tour, and we drove up the California coast all the way up to Vancouver and flew home to Toronto from Vancouver. It was like, because, you know, at the time it was like America's under attack.
Yeah.
So we didn't even get to finish the session with them. So it kind of got finished. You know, we did our thing, they did their thing. We sent it back and forth. But the time in the studio with them for one day was just hysterical. I mean, they're just the funniest guys, as you could obviously imagine.
Ho, ho, ho. So many Christmas letters. So many wishes. Lucy wants a squeezy doll. Jimmy wants a moon rocket. Oh, this list's rather long.
I wonder if we can now move on to the Sum 41 Rocks documentary. I know it's something you guys have spoken about a lot in the past, but I wonder if you could, you know, again, we're going to have listeners who might not be aware of it. I think it was with War Child that you went to the Congo, is that right? And
Yep.
you were doing some work there, working with some of the young kids to do with music, I believe. And then essentially a fight or war, or even a war broke out. I've got a quote here actually from the documentary, which is a UN embassy person or representative, and he says, if this country falls apart again, it's going to have started here. And he kind of literally pointed to the spot that you guys are in. So I wonder if you could talk us through that, because it was absolutely fascinating and must have been a difficult experience for you.
Yeah, it was War Child Canada, and we were kind of getting more involved with them, and they suggested that we do this documentary. We didn't know, like, maybe we thought maybe we'd give them a song for a compilation, but they suggested we actually go to a documentary, like physically go to the country. And there'd been a ceasefire in the Congo for, I guess, a year, maybe 2 years. So we felt like it was fine to go to. And it was basically, our mission was to interview ex-child soldiers who had fought in the war that had killed 3 million people. It was like the biggest African war, like the worst African war in history.
Right.
So we wanted to interview these ex-child soldiers, see how they're, you know, going about their business and learning how to live life after this whole thing. And it was, you know, the trip was going fine. It was smooth, and, you know, it was still like there was definitely tension there still, obviously, but it was pretty smooth. And then one night we heard what sounded like construction in like way off in the mountains or whatever. And the locals hit the ground. Like, we were in a hotel, and in the lobby having a beer or something, and the locals all hit the ground. And when you get Congolese locals hitting the ground, you know something's wrong. So we, you know, and there was people from the embassy there that were staying at the same hotel, and they were kind of calling, seeing what was going on. And what had happened, there was a conflict at the border between Rwanda and the Congo, where a general wasn't allowed to cross the border, and then they started firing at the border, and then so the whole thing erupted again. A bunch of rebel, you know, groups got involved, and we were held up in a hotel. I think there was about 40 people in the hotel, and we all got shoved into two hotel rooms, and we were there for, I guess, a day and a half in these 2 hotel rooms, just stuffed in these rooms. And there was a UN peacekeeper at the hotel. His name was Chuck Peltier. And that's who we named Chuck after, the album.
Right,
and
right.
He was there, kind of our only kind of, like, he was basically in charge of the whole situation, because he was the only guy there that had any experience in it. And he had a bat. He didn't even have anything to really protect us other than his brains, because he'd been through it before. And then we eventually got the UN came with tanks and evacuated the whole hotel, and we got carried out in these tanks to the UN compound, and then we spent the night on the lawn of the UN compound, and then they got us a bus, just like, you know, like a normal school bus, to go to the airport. And I remember we had to put our bags up in the windows, so if there was any stray bullets that came through, it would hit the bags. It was a crazy experience, and it seems like a dream. Like, it seems like it didn't happen now, because it's just like, I can't believe, if you think about it, it's like, I can't even believe that happened to me. I can't believe we were in that situation. And the scary thing is, people are in that situation every day. Like, we're lucky that we got evacuated and we were able to leave. But it's like you get home and you kind of feel sad, because you're like, wow, the people that live there they just live in it. So it's, you know, it's really sad, and you know, that's kind of what happened.
Yeah, it was watching it. It's like the tension in it is palpable, and you can really tell it's kind of you guys are pretty anxious about what's taking place. What was running through your mind at the time?
It was a lot of uncertainty because being in those hotel rooms, and then you're hearing all the gunshots around. You're hearing a helicopter fly overhead, and then you're feeling like they're pumping these mortars from the ground, which they have no destination. They just land where they land. So they would land close to the hotel and shake the whole hotel. The whole roof was rattling. So it's like, you're thinking any moment either a bomb's going to hit our hotel, or you're going to get these rebel groups who just want to pillage they just want to steal and rape the women and come through your hotel, and so you're thinking maybe that might happen any moment, where they just like take on our hotel and take it over. So it's just like you're basically, your whole body, it just goes numb, and you just have, it's a lot of uncertainty and a lot of like, okay, well, this could be it.
Well, man, that's heavy. That must have been a terrifying experience, and quite a sobering one as well. Thanks for talking about that in so much detail. It is very interesting, and I think there was a line in the documentary. One of you guys made a joke about, the Strokes now probably in a bar in New York surrounded by supermodels, and you guys are in the middle of it. And just kudos to you guys for actually getting involved with War Child and going over there. That was kind of a brave call from you guys, and I think you used your fame, if you like. I don't like that word, but your fame or your pull to draw attention to a big issue, and I think that's a really cool thing you did. We'll begin to wrap up. I mean, one question I do have is, what musical ambitions do you still have left?
I mean, just kind of the same kind of stuff. Like, I want to continue making good music, and I want to continue playing live. Like, that's kind of the most fun for me is playing live. Like, I love going on tour, and I love playing shows. I love producing too, and I love recording, but I really get a big kick out of playing live. There's nothing like it. It's like an adrenaline rush that you can't really get anywhere else, or at least I can't experience it anywhere else. So, I just want to continue down this path and just keep having fun. The biggest thing is, when it's become in the past, there's been times where it has become not fun, and that's when we took a long break. And I just want it to continue to be fun, and right now we're having fun, so I want it to just be like that.
Good stuff, which is exactly what your initial ambition was, I think, when you were 14, first joined the band. So.
That's it, minus the pot and the underage drinking.
Okay, and fast forward from now, 30 to 40 years from now, how do you think Cone McCaslin will look back on his career?
Oh, I don't know. That's a good question. I have no idea. Even if I look back now to the albums we've done and what we've done up until this point, I'm super proud of what we've accomplished. Not a lot of bands get to do what we've done, but there's still so much more I feel like we can accomplish. So I don't know. There's still some unwritten chapters, I think. So it's hard to say.
What fears do you have for the music industry going forward, and how might they be addressed?
Ooh, good question. I mean, so much has changed since we even got involved, got signed. People were actually still buying albums back then. I don't know. My fear is that maybe that good bands won't have a chance won't make a living at doing this like we have, because it's changed so much. There's so many great bands that probably just won't get discovered, or labels won't give them the chance, because the labels aren't making money anymore, and they're super afraid to invest in these bands. And I've seen some amazing bands over the last at least even 5 years that are just like, they just can't get a deal, and no one will invest their time or their money in these bands. So that's kind of my fear, is a lot of great bands are going to get left behind and unnoticed.
Yeah, and I think you're spot on, and I think that it's kind of taps into what you said earlier about being a producer, and I think there's a lot of, it just strikes me, maybe it's just because I'm getting older, but a lot of bands that you just see who deserve to be signed and are doing great stuff, but have to kind of limit their availability and yeah, just chop up their time when they deserve to be kind of giving their full time to it. But as you say, bills need to be paid, and money in the music industry is kind of hard to come by, or harder to come by now than it perhaps once was.
Yeah, exactly. Like I know a couple of young bands that I've produced, and I've been trying to help them get deals and stuff like that, and how the label mentality now has just changed so drastically. It's like they'll give you, before it was a big budget to record an album. Now it's like, oh, here's $2,000, make the best album of the year. It's how can it's just really changed, and it's unfortunate.
Yeah. What's next for the band? So obviously you mentioned that you've got an album to finish. When are you next playing live?
We go to Belgium at the end of this month and play Grows Rock.
Right. Okay. Cool.
Which is a festival we played before. It's one of my favorite festivals actually in the world. So we do that at the end of the month, and then we're actually going to Okinawa in May to play for the Troops.
Awesome. My sister is there in Okinawa at the moment. Yeah, she said it's amazing. Have you been there?
No. Frank, our drummer, did it. He drums in Cruella, but he also drums in the Street Drum Corps, and they went. He says it's a great time, and so
it's paradise.
We're going to be there for I think 4 or 5 days, just playing shows for the Troops, which should be awesome.
Have you done that before? Played for the Troops?
We did it once. We played in Guam.
Right, and is it like in the films? Because I've only actually ever seen like coverage of it in films where like the troops are kind of like cheering crazily and loving it. Is that what it's like, or is it completely different?
Yeah, no. I can't. In Guam, I don't think they were in uniform or anything.
Right. All right. Right.
So it was. Yeah, it was just kind of like any other show. They're young guys. They're like 21. They're early 20s.
Yeah. And
they just wanted. I think they really appreciate it because they're stuck on this base all the time. And for bands to go and do that, it's good for them and gives them something to do.
Great stuff.
Other than the training and stuff.
Yeah. And then I guess you're doing festivals in the summer.
Yeah, we're doing Warped Tour.
Right. Okay.
And then we're going to do some European and UK festivals in August as well. And that's we're booked up till like the end of August right now, and then we're trying to make plans for the fall, and there's a couple ideas floating around. So there's going to the album's coming out this year. So we've already done a bunch of stuff, but it's kind of just starting now. Cool.
All sounds good. Sounds busy as ever. So, okay, we'll wrap up there. Cone, thanks for giving us your time. Fascinating insight into the working practices in the music industry. I hope you enjoyed it, and good luck with the new album. Good luck with the tour and the festivals, and hope to speak to you again.
Awesome. Thanks for having me.
Nice one. Thanks, Cone.
Have fun.
Nice one. Thanks, Cone. Cheers, mate.
More episodes featuring musicians who work closely with the likes of David Bowie, Michael Jackson, Bob Dylan, the Beatles, Oasis, Elvis Presley, go to the StageLeftPodcast.com. You can stream all episodes on Audio Boom, and also you can download all episodes on iTunes by clicking the subscribe button on the Stage Left Podcast. See you next time.